Hello, this is an introduction to the Grand Staff. And what this is about is figuring out what all these lines mean, how the Grand Staff works, and what do all these symbols underneath mean. Back in the days of the Knights medieval period, when they had monks and the church in charge of lots of things, they were the only ones that could and did have education, and they made up this system for reading music. It was a system that showed on paper how pitches would be higher and lower based on certain levels. And there are details as to what levels and what letters are designated for all these lines here, but I can't get into that right now. But suffice it to say that these lines and spaces that you see from here, you can see where my cursor is way down here, all the way up to here, show you a low as opposed to high. All right. And if you look at it from bottom to top, you can see that they show a low to high level. And the levels are also designated by lines and the spaces in between. So each one of these are like steps or a staircase going up. So you have line, space, line, space, line, space. They also, the monks, used letter designations to show which line was which, because as you can see, there's a whole bunch of lines. There's 11 of them, and they created 10 spaces in between, plus there's some above and below lines and spaces that could happen as well. And to be able to tell which ones they were, if you're like in this middle area, it's kind of difficult to tell and know which one is which and what to call it. So they devised the idea of using the alphabet, the first 7 letters from A through G. And after the letter G, the alphabet started over again. So it would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So that way they can designate each one of these lines and spaces as a letter. This bottom line being G, and this top line way up here being F. And if you follow the alphabet all the way up, following lines and spaces, this line way down here, G, then this space being A, then this line B, then C, then D, and so on. If you went all the way up, you'll get to F way up here. Now, the interesting thing is when music and just history in general started evolving and getting closer and closer to where we are now, more and more people were becoming educated, and they wanted to be indoctrinated or used to or learn how to read music, and the music that was there by the church. They wanted to be able to record a lot of things, because a lot of them simple songs that were passed along from person to person, it was kind of hard to remember how it went exactly. It was it went from by word of mouth from one person to another. These were like traveling minstrels and troubadours and so on, all the way across Europe. And they wanted to know how the church were able to record certain songs to sound the same. And when I say record, on paper, so that the people who are singing could read those instructions and know how to sing certain things again. So this whole device of singing, the whole technique, was shared with the public even more so, but it was very, very difficult to read. And over time, it was discovered that maybe it should be simplified a little bit more. So what was decided was to take this middle line out. Even though the middle line represented something, they're just going to take it out to show, let me go ahead and slide it down over here, to show 5 up here and 5 down here. And these 5 up here represented the higher pitches, and these 5 down here represented the lower pitches. So what they did is they made some symbols to represent the high pitches, like this right here, which is called the treble clef, and this right here, which is called the bass clef. All right, and they were the symbols for high and low. Let me move this over just a tiny bit here, and this one over just a tiny bit as well. All right, so, and still they follow the same letters, and even with the missing line there, that letter still existed, but the line was taken away just so you can see how you had the 5 above and 5 below, but that line still was there, but invisible. This actually ended up being the line that represented C. So and since it was right in the middle between the high notes and the low notes, it was called middle C. and it still is today. So in between, if you're looking, if that line were here, you would notice that there would have been a space here and a space up above it. So you'd have C right here. So between these 5 and these 5, there are actually 3 different notes: B, middle C, and then D. And then this bottom line here would be E, all the way going up to the letter F. And starting at the bottom here, you have G, all the way to the top line, which is going to be A. All right. So now that we have all that, let's get into the actual idea of the grand staff. Now, grand staff looks like this. It's without that center line. All right, I moved it down here. They also bracketed the whole thing together so we understand what it means. So I'm going to put this bracket up there and kind of turn it around. Move it over here. You'll probably recognize it once I get this bracket in there. All right. You'll probably see this a lot on piano music, and a lot of times the left hand is designated as this part right here, and the right hand designated as this part right here on the piano, because the right side of the piano are higher notes, the left side of the piano are lower notes. So you see that in piano music a lot. But the grand staff isn't necessarily just for piano, although piano uses it most often, but it can be used for many, many instruments. All right. And for the musical things that we do, we also have different symbols called time signatures, which also designate how beats are going to be grouped in every one of these sections. All right. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of the time signature. That would be for a future lesson. But the big thing with this is this top number, and it tells us that beats need to be in groups of 4. Now, in the grand staff, where the beats occur is where the problem lies with understanding what the grand staff is. Since these are 5 lines up here and these are 5 lines below here, the biggest misunderstanding is that this is something separate from this. But as I told you before, this used to be 11 lines, and it's all part of the same music. If I were to put, let me see if I can just make a couple of these here. If I were to put notes up there like this, oh, wrong one. Well, I guess I can put that there as well. I'll just move this down just a tiny bit, just so I can just show you different things. And this up here, and maybe this over here. Well, maybe like right here, and this right here. And I'm going to go ahead and make one more of these. And how about like that? Okay. Now, if you look at this, there are 4 beats here. All right. These are 1/2 a beat apiece. So when you have 2 of them, that makes 1 beat. Here's beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4. Now, what gets very misunderstood is that since you only have 3 beats here, it doesn't seem like it's a complete measure. But one of the beats is up here, up on the upper one. Now, like I said, people get confused because they see this is a higher section, this is a separate section which is lower, and they think it should be completely independent, and it's not. When you read through the grand staff, the beat goes all the way across this way, utilizing the low notes and the high notes, all right, all the way across. Now, when you're working on certain music programs, like, say, for example, Finale, or Sonar, which is part of Cakewalk, or Sibelius, or any of the other music programs, they try to make things a little bit more simplified so you understand what goes on above and what goes on below. So in this case, what they do is they put a rest. Here's where beat 1 is. It's down here, but up in the upper area, nothing happens. So they put a rest there. So people misunderstand, well, there's 2 beats here. Well, there really isn't. This is what occurs on beat 1. On beat 1, this happens in the lower end, but on beat 1, there's nothing happening here. Now, we already said this is beat 2 up here, but down here, there's nothing. So I'm going to put one of these over here. And now we have beat 1, beat 2, and now here's 3 and 4, but you don't see anything up here. So, like I say, music programs will either insist that you put these up here, or they'll put them in for you. And it gets to be very confusing because you see, well, these are all worth a beat apiece. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 beats here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 beats here. So this looks like you have 8 beats, and it gives people the impression that in a grand staff, there's like 2 separate measures. You read the top one, then you read the bottom one. The reality is they're done at the same time. If there were a bar that can go all the way across, in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and use this bracket. I'm just going to slide it all the way across here. You'll notice how this is like beat 1, beat 2, you see how these occur at the same time? Beat 3 at the same time, and beat 4. All right? It goes across like that. So these things happen like that. As you get more advanced, you'll even find that there are notes that happen at the same time stacked on top of each other. For example, if I were to put this one right here, just directly underneath this, all right, these two would happen at the same time, but this is 2 beats, so it would ring for 2.